So we're going to look at the in Jesus' high priestly prayer in John 17, one of my life chapters over my core material, which is one of those chapters that just kind of keeps on giving. There's just so many layers and so many things going on. And actually, some of the stuff I'm going to be sharing and interacting around today actually came about as one of those things when I was studying this passage for something else, and then the Lord kind of circled around and opened up a whole other layer of this passage I had never seen, which tapped into what's this theme we're going to be talking about, which tapped into the concept of core material, stewarding our core material, which for me is very much part of my own life message. So it surprised me and kind of popped up its head. And like, wow, I never saw that before. So this is a kind of a fun little study that it's easy to miss, but it's powerful in its simplicity. First of all, a tiny bit of context. Of course, John 17, Jesus' high priestly prayer, as it's often known. Really helpful to place it in the context of where it's happening, kind of what's happening before and after, just before and just after. So shortly before this, and what I'm really looking for here is the condition of the disciples, the condition of his team and his ministry. You know, how was his ministry doing? How was his team doing? What was this kind of the state of things? Mm-hmm. If you were a leader whose team was in this state and whose ministry was in this condition, would you have the confidence to say the things he says in his prayer? Which tells us a great deal about what cues he was taking. In other words, what was he looking at? And even it tells us a great deal about what he was working for. In his mind, what was success? How did he know it was working or not? And I can pretty confidently say in advance, and I know you all probably know this passage, many of you well enough to already have some pre-thoughts about that question I just asked. But I can honestly say, certainly myself, most leaders I relate to, certainly our instinctive response to that kind of question would be, we tend to look consistently, that's the way it works with us, we tend to look more at externals and more at certain kind of data that would give us the answer to the question, how is our ministry doing? Is it working or not? Then Jesus seems to be doing here in the way he's taking some cues from the Father, and he's looking at some things at his team in a way that is probably instructional for us. But just as a kind of as a way of kind of fleshing that out a little bit, chapter 15, 16, there's a lot of teaching going on. He's giving them some really powerful, heavy-duty content, including in the chapters just before this, themes about his upcoming betrayal and crucifixion and departure start popping up with greater frequency. And he just kind of wanted to let them know so they wouldn't be too startled by what was coming. So he actually said something pretty plainly like, I'm going to be betrayed. I'm going to be, killed. I'm going to leave you. Things, really ambiguous statements like that, which they found ways to not really understand repeatedly. Amazing how good we can be at not hearing the things we don't want to hear if they sound like they're going to be costly to us. So he goes in 16, there's this great little section around the middle of the passage. He says, "A little while you will no longer behold me, and again a little while and you will see me." Some of his disciples therefore said to another, "What is this thing he's telling us? A little while there." Just, this doesn't make any sense. What is this thing he says? A little while. We do not know what he is talking about. So this is his top tier leaders. His top tier leaders, and there are moments when they they get glimpses of understanding what he's saying, and other moments where they're literally among themselves saying, we don't have any idea what he just said. He's making less sense to us the longer we're with him, and that seems to be getting more frequent these days. So then, of course, he says, "Are you finding yourself perplexed by what I just said?" And they're like, "Yeah, just a little." So then they have another round of conversation. They say, "Oh," later in that chapter in verse 16, "Oh, okay, now we know what you're speaking. You're speaking plainly. Now we know that we get it. We're on board with you." And the next thing he says, verse 31, just before this chapter, he says, Jesus answered them, "Do you now believe? Really? Do you get it?" And Behold, an hour is coming and has already come for you to be scattered, each to his own home, and to leave me alone. And yet I'm not alone, because the Father is with me. These things I have spoken to, that you may have peace. What things did he just speak to them, that they might have peace?
Bad stuff.
An hour is coming in which, what? What's going to happen?
Scattered.
You're going to be scattered. And he'd already been spoken about. He'd spoken about betrayal before this. He'd talked about being, bad things happening in various ways. And he keeps then saying, I speak to these things that you might have peace, and that that your joy might be full. And they're like, how do this and this don't tend to lead me to, inner peace, great inner peace. So then he comes into John 17, and then just as context, we won't look at it, but if you look into 18 and 19, what happens in chapter 18? They leave this place where he's praying, they go into the garden, and Judas betrays him, and then his chief lead guy, Judas, you might expect Judas, because we already had suspicions about Judas, right? And then Peter rises up and cuts off an ear. Oh, this is really good, Peter. This is really helping our cause. And he even cuts the wrong guy's ear off. Like, if you're going to cut someone's ear off, go for Judas or go for one of the Pharisees. Don't go for the servant. His ministry is in disarray. From external perspective, his leaders are not tracking. They're not together. They're not in their best form anywhere around this. And Jesus seems to be in the middle of that, pretty clear-minded about some things, which some of
They're not even aligned with where he.
No, they don't even understand
aligned
what he's really doing and what he's about at this time.
Interesting. I never thought about that.
And now let's apply that to ourselves, leaders. How would I?
Streets in disarray.
Okay, so you qualify. Okay, good. So you're feeling good about it. so check. Okay, that my ministry qualifies. Very good. Okay, John 17, verse 1. These things Jesus spoke, lifting up his eyes to heaven. Just after what? Just after this other thing he just finished saying, you're going to leave me, you're going to scatter. I want you to have peace. That's why I'm telling you that you're going to be scattered. These things Jesus spoke, and lifting up his eyes to heaven, he said, Father, the hour has come. Let's, the next phase of the plan. It's time. The hour has come. And again, we call this his high priestly prayer, and we tend to focus on all the wonderful pastoral things. He says, what is he starting his prayer with? It's time to kick the last phase of the plan in motion, where I get killed and these guys abandon me. He knows full well what he's saying at this point. The hour has come. Glorify thy Son, that the Son may glorify thee. Even as thou, now, I want you to pay attention to any verb, any form of the word give, gave, gavest, giveth, that word, okay? Depending on your translation, any variation of the word give here and throughout the rest of the passage. We won't look at all of it, but even as thou gavest him authority over all mankind, that to all whom thou hast given him, he may give eternal life. You're noticing a little theme here, a theme about something related to that word. It starts popping up frequently. And this is eternal life, that they may know thee, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, whom thou hast sent. I glorified thee on earth, having accomplished the work which thou hast given me to do. And now glorify thou me together with thyself, Father, with the glory which I had with thee before the world was. I manifested thy name to the men whom thou gavest me out of the world. Thine they were, and thou gavest them to me, and they have kept thy word. Now they have come to know that everything thou hast given me is from thee. For the words that thou hast gavest me, I have given them. Hearing an early theme around some things that are being given in various ways. So let's just unpack that a little bit. But at the very beginning here, Jesus starts out and he says, basically, I accomplished the work you sent me to do. It's working. I did the thing you gave me to do, and it's working. So it's time for the last part of the work of the last act of the play now to play out, because I accomplished what I came here to do. I accomplished what you sent me here to do. and they got it. I mean, look at it on its face. I accomplished the mission. I'm ready to go. Because of the fact that we're now at this point where it has reached this level of fulfillment of the mission that I came here for, kick it into gear, which means I'll die very soon. And this part of the process will be. Because you gave me something, and you gave me some people, and then you showed me how to give them what you gave me. And because that has now happened, I have been given something, and then you gave me some people to give it to, and then I have given it to them, and by implication, in the ways that were appropriate to and right for me in my ministry. He did his thing. He gave what was given to him in a particular way to a particular group of people whom the Father gave him. Is that right? That's the three dimensions of giving that are in play in this chapter. If you read through the whole chapter, the theme keeps coming over and over, all the way through the chapter. Now, there's also themes about unity, and there's a whole bunch of other themes that we often tend to focus on. And I had never seen this whole layer in this chapter.
Wow.
And never seen just a completely transparent overlay for me, because I just wasn't tracking it that way. It is about all those other things too, but this is also the time when Jesus says, I fulfilled my mission. And in broad strokes, my mission was to receive that which had been given to me, that you gave me, that which you put in me, that which you deposited, that which you gave me. We'll talk about the ways that happened. But essentially my mission was to receive what you gave me, and then to discern who you gave me to give it to, and then to give it to them. And because I have done that, I have see that you hear the stewardship in that. See, he understood that what he had and his task, and what he had was something that, first of all, he understood that what he had was given to him, right? So that's a stewardship premise. What you have was given to you, and it was given to you purposefully. So something has been given to you for a reason. You have been entrusted with something that the Father, and he was very clear, the Father gave me some things to give. And then the Father also gave me specifically those I was to give it to. And then over time, as I grew into this space, the Father gave me the way that I was to give it to them. I grew into, and I matured into, and I discerned, and then I lived out, I walked out the ways, the unique methodologies. That gets into methodologies. That gets into, Bobby Clinton talks about scope and scale, and there's all these different, he sorted all that out, where he came to understand, this is what I do. I give that which was given to me, to the people he gave me, in a particular way that fits me and reflects my particular mission. So, just jumping way ahead, for instance, this gathering that we're in right now reflects most of the stuff I have done around the world for 30 years. I prefer smaller settings where I have intensive contact, probably eyeball to eyeball, over meals and with places to interact throughout the week, and then where relationship, and there's going to be possible some relational continuity before and after, and probably not a group of over 60 to 80 people. Why has that been what I have mostly done throughout my life? Because this is the way that fits me, that's been right for me to give that which the Father is giving to me to those he's given me to give it to. So that gets into that methodology thing. Other people, some people love the big stage with thousands of people out there. I do that from time to time, but when I do that, I'm doing it because I'm very specifically where the Father has instructed me to do that in that situation, but I'm still looking for the handful of people with possible relational connections that will come out of that I'll track with afterwards, because that's how I give what has been given to me. And I understand that, so part of my stewardship is coming to understand not just what has the Father given me, and who is he giving me to give it to, but then how am I particularly and uniquely. And of course the how, I think that last one is the one that gets the most that evolves the most over time. Because sometimes the methodologies, the delivery models, even the scope, scale, whatever, can vary more over time. But at a fundamental level, it starts with the Father gives us things, something to give. Let's think a little bit about how that happens. So, how are we given stuff to give? How are we given whatever that... one other thing I should observe before we do that is simply that my conviction is that one of the dimensions of who Jesus is that comes out in particular in the early chapters of the book of Hebrews 3, 4, 5, 6. One of the dimensions of Jesus that I love is Jesus as our older brother. Jesus as the eldest member of the family. And the firstborn who didn't just come to be, yes, he's an intercessor, and yes, he's our mediator, and yes, he's the great high priest, all those things. But then there's this theme of he's also our older brother who's showing us what it looks like to be a member of the family of God, to be a son or a daughter of God. He's the oldest one. He went first, and then he's saying, this is what mature sonship, daughtership, this is what it looks like to be a mature child in the household of God. So he literally, when he talks about our elder brother or the firstborn son, what's the implication of that? It's first, and now the rest of the family is following after, is growing into that. So my premise in this specific thing, the thing that I think is so liberating, he was all of these things that we think of him to, but he's also our older brother and say, hey guys, that's how you do it. So in this context, I believe that every human being, certainly everyone who's born into the family of God, everyone who discovers that they have been invited to become a child of God and they embrace that and they begin to grow into what it means to be a member of the family of God. Every single individual, that this simple framework holds true. God gives them some things throughout in their life, and we'll talk about the how maybe, and then he gives them he gives them some people that they're to give that to. He literally he puts things in us, and then he gives us who we're to give it to. And then he will help us, by the grace of God, discover the unique way that we are to give the things that he has put in us to those that he has specifically and uniquely given us to give it to. And that's a stewardship call of every child in the family of God. And that the family of God then becomes a place where we all discover what we've been given. And then who have we been given to give it to? And then how are we particularly to give that which has been given to us? Pretty simple formula, isn't it? I'm not really into formulas too much, but that one I kind of like. Pretty simple. Boom, boom. Three dimensions to the giving flow. True of any child of God. Jesus is modeling that for us here. So later in his life, and notice how clear he is. Versus, think of how many people and how any of us could easily end our lives like, so, getting near the end of your life, huh? How's it going? Well, hopefully we're past the point where we're hoping that we're saved. Let's get, let's at least move past, okay, we can know that. You don't have to guess, and that's a great place to be, because at that point, then you have the full assurance of salvation, and you can actually begin to grow into what it really means to be a child of God, instead of wondering, am I in or am I out, or am I in or am I out? So that much we can get that settled. But it's very easy, and in fact, we all experience in our lives, throughout our lifetimes, and the older you get and the more you see this around you, people dying or people nearing death without any kind of clarity or assurance about these issues. Paul says, hey, I fought the good fight, I ran the race, therefore it's laid up for me. It was like, I didn't do it perfectly, and he could give you a long list of ways, like, I am of all men, least qualified. The fact that he used me, oh my goodness, that's really a miracle. So his confidence and his enthusiasm and his excitement about it didn't come out of the fact that I did it way better than the rest of you and my track record's impeccable. It wasn't about that. But there was a clarity and a resonant confidence in him. I fought the good fight. Now, anyone who's ever fought a fight knows that fights are messy things. If you fought the good fight, then you probably got some scars to show for it. And maybe you think back at that, maybe I should have parried there instead of thrusted, or maybe I should have used my shield. But you fought it! He's not saying I fought it perfectly. He's saying I fought the good fight. And I ran the race. Same thing with running a race. Any athlete is going to think back to it and say, I could have done this, whatever. But what he's saying is, one thing I'm absolutely clear about is I fought the fight I was supposed to fight, and I ran the race that was set before me, and I ran that thing. And because I did that, because I showed up, because I leaned in, because I embraced it, therefore is laid up for me this crown of righteousness. Paul is doing what Jesus did here. He's saying, it worked. He's literally saying that. It worked. He's saying it with confidence. If you look at Paul's own life and apostolic band and all that, it worked. Yeah, ish. What measure are we using at what given moment to determine how well it worked? But you notice you don't see Paul being ambiguous about that, because something was settled in him as a mature son in the house who understood it's not about your track record, and it's not about getting it all right. It's not about being able to say, I did it way better than... It's about showing up and doing the thing and then saying, I love being a son in the household of God. Because my confidence is in the fact that I was given something, and then he gave me those that I was to give it to, and to the best of my ability, with a high degree of intentionality throughout I gave it. I gave it, and you know what? At the end of the day, that's all I can do. That's all I'm called to do. I plant the seed, Apollos watered. The increase is the outcome. The specific outcome is not mine, and I'm not going to judge myself based on how it went, how it all worked. I am focusing on the stewardship mandate of did I run the race? Did I fight the good fight? Did I show up and do the thing? And I think Jesus is modeling that in the original form right here in John 17. In a real simple form.